One team hoping to fight their way out of it, of course, are Leeds, who suffered a 4-0 loss to Tottenham. And that was the end of Marcelo Bielsa. And I think, actually, most people will be quite sad about that. Marcelo Bielsa obviously came into Leeds in the Championship and has had a huge impact on the club and on the city and the fans, really. He really endeared himself to the fans, didn't he? And his way isn't always orthodox. It isn't the most conventional style at times. It can be very aggressive type of football, but it's been entertaining, certainly. But this result brought the whole thing to an end, and you can understand why. They've conceded 20 goals in February, the most by any team in a single calendar month in Premier League history, which is really, really worrying as a stat. They're on a downward trajectory. And of course, they are missing some key players, still without Patrick Bamford, still without Calvin Phillips. They've got a small squad. So, Dave, Leeds, what's next for them? And how do you feel about Marcelo Bielsa's exit?
You know, he's been there at the club for a while now, and it's going to be strange to not see him on the touchline in his usual squatting, crouch down position. I don't know how his knees are, because mine would be. My knees are terrible, but.
I just thought it was going to happen to the bucket. I feel really bad. And also his little translator. I loved him. He was great.
Yeah. He's obviously a huge figure at Leeds, and they won't forget, obviously, everything that he's done for them and just how exciting they have been to watch. And I wouldn't say as much this season. They've definitely lacked a lot more in terms of going forward, especially in the last few games. You know, they've kind of dropped down the table, and there's been, like you say, a big concern over the numbers in their squad, and they've obviously definitely missed Patrick Bamford up the top end of the field. They've struggled to score goals in the last few games. Jack Harrison hasn't looked the player that he was looking earlier in the season. So a lot has gone wrong for them in such a short space of time, and it's crept up on them, really, those relegation spaces. And I'm sure Leeds fans will be just kind of wondering how they managed to get into this position. The
problem is that how they're going to get out of it now. Because I watched this game, and I've seen Leeds a couple of times recently. I obviously watched them play Villa, and they got a draw there somehow. But defensively, they are so open. And although they've got some very talented players on the pitch in the likes of Rafinha, I think Rodrigo is a very good player as well. When Calvin Phillips comes back, we know what he's capable of. But defensively, they just look so weak, and they just leave so much space to be attacked. Now, they are definitely in this relegation battle now. And by the time this podcast comes out, they'll have probably done something completely different, and I'll look stupid, and Sam Allardyce will be manager or something. But it looks almost certain that they're bringing in former RB Salzburg and Leipzig manager Jesse March to come in for the rest of the season at least. Now, March was appointed to be Nagelsmann's replacement at Leipzig. It didn't last very long. He left in December. No experience in the Premier League. I'm not sure whether he's really ever had a relegation battle to contend with. But that looks like where Leeds are going with this. What do you make of that appointment? Is there enough in his managerial history and the fact that he's worked with such good players like Haaland at Salzburg and developed some really good talents there like Minamino? Have you seen enough of Jesse March to think that it's a good appointment for Leeds, or is it maybe a good appointment at the wrong time? What do you think of this one?
Yeah, you might be right about that. What is it, 11, 12 games we've got left of the season now?
Yeah.
If they were to get relegated and be in charge of the club, would that be a long-term appointment? Probably not. It's a risk, I would say. Jesse March, like you say, he's got a great reputation in terms of what he's done in some of the clubs in RB, particularly at Salzburg. He did have a really good reputation. For whatever reason, it didn't quite work out at Leipzig, but I can imagine Leeds will have done their homework on particular candidates, particularly what would work with the style of play. They definitely need to be more organised in their style of play. There needs to be a plan B, because they just seem to be stick to type. They aren't able to revert to type because they don't know anything other than, plan A. So he definitely does need to bring something different. They need to be able to be more difficult to beat, like you say there, and particularly the last few games. It's just they look too easy to play against. Teams create so many opportunities and chances against them. So it becomes more of a case of that Leeds have to score 2 or 3 goals themselves to even be in a shout with being competitive in the game. And we've seen that particularly over the last 4 games. Obviously, they drew, was it 3-3 with Villa? They obviously scored 2 against United. It wasn't enough. They conceded 4. They lost 6-0 to Liverpool. Obviously, lost 4-0 to Tottenham. Against the bigger teams, they aren't being difficult enough to beat. And that is something that you need to be in the Premier League. Yeah. As good as you are going forward, you need to have that balance, and it's just something that they don't have.